Parent materials from which soils are forming are put into some categories based upon their inherent properties. The first way we can classify a parent material is whether that material is either inorganic or organic. Well, inorganic parent materials are going to be those that are rock or mineral matter in origin. These are primarily inorganic types of compounds, which is another way of saying these compounds were not formed from living organisms, and in general, although there are some exceptions to this, in general they're going to be very low in the element carbon, because the element carbon, of course, is what is the primary constituent of materials which have been formed from living organisms, which we classify into the second category, the organic types of parent material. All soils, once a certain amount of weathering and development has taken place, will have both inorganic parent materials and organic parent materials as a part of that total mass of material from which that soil is forming. The bulk of the material will be inorganic. There are a few exceptions to this. If we are looking at a soil that is developing in a very high moisture environment where oxygen is being excluded, such as in a peat bog or a swamp or something of this nature, then soil development there could be primarily from organic parent materials or plant and animal derived materials that are decomposing underneath this high moisture, low oxygen environment. Once we get into the inorganic types of parent material, we can further break these down into two general categories. And as you see from your lecture outline, the first of these categories is considered to be a residual type of parent material. Well, what does this term residual mean? Residual means that these soils are forming in place. So residual types of soils are those that have formed from a basic mass of rock, mineral matter type of parent material, and they are forming predominantly at the surface of this material. So these types of soils typically develop over long periods of time. The rate of formation of these soils is quite slow. Now, rate of formation is very dependent upon the climate of that particular area. If you have a lot of temperature extremes, high moisture environment, we expect that rate of formation to be much more rapid than we would underneath a much drier type of climate, where we lack the precipitation to promote these decomposition and chemical weathering responses in the soil. So that's pretty much a basic definition of a residual type of parent material. This is a residual soil is one that is formed in place from a given mass of mineral matter origin parent material. Transported soils are ones which, obviously based on this term, have been moved or developed in one location and moved to another location by some transporting medium. There are different types of transporting mediums, but by and large, these transporting mediums are going to either be wind, water, or ice. And each of these soils, from a formation and development standpoint, is put into a category based upon what that transporting agent is. So if we're talking about transported soils that have been transported by water, some of the terms that are associated there, one of them is an alluvial soil. So alluvial soils are ones that have been transported by water, and I think most of us have seen this response anytime we have flooding occurs. Water is passing over the surface of the land. It picks up and transports soil particles with it, and then as that water slows down, the larger sized particles settle out first, and then after some greater period of time, the silt or medium sized particles, and then eventually the clay particles will settle out once that water stands for a long enough period of time. So when we see alluvial soils, those that have been transported by water, we typically see this what I call filtering or siltation effect, to where the individual separates, the sand, the silt, and the clay, are actually deposited in layers or in a layering type of effect.